spreader. I got a food thing.
Your barn on the.
Yeah, you know something, the key is.
Yeah, it's like, I have a little barn, it's only. It's sort of like.
Keys in it, trickle chargers on the battery, and then in the winter I got a little heater on there to make sure the fuel doesn't gel up.
It's like a barn.
Yeah. I had trouble with the trailer now. I've already gotten trouble with the chainsaw twice. So, pretty soon I'm gonna have to harvest some of my toys.
Well, I've got a DR brush mower.
Uh-huh.
Yes, that one that. I haven't.
Yeah, I know.
Like I say, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because it's.
Yes, so that I can.
Are we good?
I've got a wood clear amount more, but I put on the deck. Good summer. Spring.
Like to call this meeting to order, the March 6th Planning and Zoning Commission. Tonight on the agenda, we have 2 letters of recommendation, 4 information reports, and 1 update item. Can I get a roll call of commission members, please?
Commissioner Helfrey,
Here.
Commissioner Ward,
Here,
Commissioner Ward.
here,
Thank you. Commissioner Cohn,
Here.
Commissioner Broyles,
here,
Commissioner Clayton. Here. Commissioner Depler, Commissioner Jackson
Here,
is here. Chair Beatty here, Councilmember Brost here, Mayor Boland.
Here. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Can I get an approval of the meeting minutes from February 6th, please? Motion by Commissioner Cohn, second by Commissioner Clayton. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
hi,
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Does the Department of Planning have any opening comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and thank you. Tonight, after the letter of recommendations, there are 2 items relating to solar energy systems. One is a recommendation regarding the installation of a set of solar energy systems on a property on Thunderhead Mountain Road. And then we move into the changes to the actual solar regulations in our zoning code. So the department would respectfully request if we could move the action on the individual property till after our discussion on the solar energy regulations. It might be more germane and might lead to a better decision-making process at the end of it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get does that need a motion or can?
it does. Motion to change the agenda.
I'll make a motion to move it to the end.
All right, and seconded by Commissioner Clayton. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
hi,
Any opposed? All right, any abstain? Thank you. All right. So do we have any public comment speaker cards?
Mr. Chair, the first speaker card is for Mr. Doster.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Beatty, members of the Planning Commission, Mayor Boland. My name is Mike Doster. I live at 16839 Chesterfield Bluff Circle in Chesterfield. I'm here representing the petitioner Greenberg Development Company. We received the information report Friday and have reviewed it preliminarily, and I wanted to make a comment about the conditions which are in attachment B of the information report. The conditions appear to be appropriate, but we will be reviewing them and maybe discussing them with staff between now and the next meeting of the Planning Commission. And I'm happy to answer any questions that I can answer.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker card is Mr. Stock.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Mayor Boland. For the record, my name is George Stock, and my address is 257 Chesterfield Business Parkway, and that's Stock and Associates Consulting Engineers. I'm here this evening on behalf of Greenberg Development. just like Mr. Doster. And I'm available to answer any questions, but we have had the opportunity to read the informational report. We are in agreement with the report. There were some items that were brought up within the report, recommendations to be incorporated into the site development plan, which, as you know, is the next phase. I would just say that we're in agreement with incorporating those details that are not part of a preliminary development plan, but become part of a site development plan, and we will incorporate that and move forward. Happy to answer any questions you may have this evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker card is Ms. Wilcox.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Joy Wilcox. I live at 17345 Manchester Road. I also own property at 17351. I'm here tonight asking for the second reading on my rezoning request. If I would have known last month there were 2 readings, I would have asked for them both then. So if we could move it along tonight, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker, Mr. Downey, has his hand up on Zoom.
All right. Thank you.
Just give me a moment. I'll bring him in.
Hello. Can you hear me and see me okay?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
You mind if
State
I?
your name and address and then go ahead. Sorry.
Sure. My name is Tom Downey. I live at 2638 Windcrest Falls Drive in Wildwood. May I share my screen, please? I just have like 5 slides I'd like to show.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. Okay, hopefully you can see my browser and it says residential roof solar systems, right?
Yes.
So most of you have heard me speak already before you. And today I realize my case comes in front of the city council next week, not tonight. So I'm not here to speak about my own home. I'm here to speak about solar on the roof in general, about the laws in Missouri and about some of the science there. I put on here, whoops, there was a pasted that in the wrong spot. I put here my name and my educational degrees because we are talking about electrical systems and the flow of electrons. So I did want everyone to know that my background does qualify me to understand these concepts pretty well. I have an undergraduate and a master's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Missouri in Columbia. Aside from that, in my career, I've spent the last 30 years building a biotechnology software company successfully. So I've been kind of embedded in technology for my whole life. That's kind of what I eat, breathe, and sleep. I've also been the owner of a solar rooftop system on my business in Chesterfield for 10 years now. Never had a problem with them at all. Never had to replace an inverter or a solar panel or anything. They worked wonderfully and have generated plenty of electricity. Now, over the last 6 or 7 months that we've been meeting about this, I've been a little bit troubled that a lot of false information has been given to this committee. I think by people who just don't know any better and they Google until they find what they want to say and they say it, like solar panels only last 10 to 20 years. Many companies warranty them for 40 years. So and then there was a big concern about batteries. So I just wanted to kind of educate some people a little bit about solar systems. Please forgive me if this is so obvious that you already know it, but it seemed to me that some people didn't have a good understanding of this. So I want to explain a couple things here. There are 3 types of solar installations for a rooftop. There's off-grid, meaning you are not connected to the electrical grid at all. You do not need service from Ameren. You are fully self-sufficient. There's grid-tied, which you're connected to Ameren and it all works that way and there are no batteries involved. And the third is a hybrid where you have both service with Ameren and you have batteries for a grid. So basically in this really simple cartoon, you've got a house there. It's got solar panels. Those solar panels absorb the sun. They cause the electrons to break free and generate electricity. That electricity is first and foremost used to power your home. If there is electricity left over after your home is powered, that electricity will hopefully go somewhere. We don't want to waste it, right? If you're on off-grid, most people will send it to a battery so they can store it and use it later. But most rooftop residential systems are not off-grid. They are grid tied, number 2. They are tied to Ameren. That is the one that I applied for. The concern about batteries in my system came up 2 times from the committee. My system has no batteries. So let me go into a little more detail on the grid tied system. That is what most people use.
1 minute, 1 minute.
Okay. Anyway, this shows how it works. Any excess electricity goes to Ameren. Ameren will distribute it to my neighbors. Ameren will pay me some amount for that electricity. No batteries involved, okay? The second thing I want to bring up is that solar panels are more efficient, or they're less efficient if they get very hot, okay? And that's why these surface-mounted solar panels are not going to be efficient. They're going to get hot. There's no airflow to cool them off. The last, I'm sure you're aware of this law that went into effect on January 1st. The key thing here in yellow is you can make whatever rules you want as long as it doesn't adversely affect the cost or efficiency of the system. Now, I realize some people are going to say that's HOAs. That's not us, the city of Wildwood. Why would the city of Wildwood want to do something that the state has said an HOA cannot do? Are you just looking for fights? You're going to go to court over this.
Time.
Everything that you've proposed is going to
Time,
make it
sir.
more expensive and less efficient. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I've received no additional speaker cards and I don't see any other hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. All right. All right. So at this time, we'll close the public comment session and no public hearings tonight. So Mr. Newberry, our first letter of recommendation, PZ 1-23.
PZ 1-23, Joy A. Wilcox Living Trust, 17345 Manchester Road, Wildwood, Missouri, 63038. A request for a change in zoning from the amended C8 Planned Commercial District, Town Center Pond, Historic Pond District to the R1 1 acre Residence District, Town Center Historic Pond District for a 1 acre tract of land that is located on the north side of Manchester Road, west of Pond Road, locator number 23W220207, street addresses 17345 and 17351 Manchester Road. Proposed uses, all permitted uses being set forth in chapter 415.110 R1 1 acre Residence District, Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight the draft letter of recommendation regarding the request Mr. Newberry read into the record. As is noted in the draft letter of recommendation, there is a request to change the zoning from commercial to residential. In the Pond Historic District, all districts are generally favorable. And so therefore, at the last meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, it unanimously approved the change in zoning. The letter reflects that action from the meeting a month ago, and therefore it is ready for final action tonight. If there are any questions after a motion and second, the department will be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Any questions or discussion or motion? Commissioner Helfrey?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Clayton. Further discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
yes,
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there any reason we aren't getting there?
It takes a while to pick up on the speaker, so those voting yes, if they could lead in with a few words before they say yes, it would come through better in the room.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, so motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Newberry, PZ 13-22.
PZ 13-22, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, City Hall 16860, Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri 63040. A request for the consideration of possible changes or amendments to various provisions of Chapter 415 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Wildwood, including but not limited to Section 415.030, 415.090, 415.110, 415.120, 415.130, 415.140, 415.150 and 415.160 pertaining to the regulation of home occupations and home-based businesses within the various zoning districts within the city and applicable definitions pertaining thereto in light of recently adopted state laws, all wards.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as you may recall, back in August of last year, 2022, new state statute went into effect, affecting how municipalities may govern home-based businesses or home occupations. The Planning and Zoning Commission spent a great deal of time with the assistance of the city attorney and the Department of Planning, working through how best to address our concerns about turning residential areas into commercial zones, but complying with state statutes. Last week, it became clear that the state legislature is rethinking their action that went into effect in August of 2022. Therefore, based upon a recommendation from the city attorney, and while the legislative session is still on call, so to speak, the Department of Planning is respectfully requesting this matter be postponed to see what the state legislature does, so as we only have to change the regulations once. The department's available for any comments or questions, as well as the city attorney after a motion and second.
You good?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Vunich. So motion to postpone. Motion by Commissioner Helfrey. Seconded by Commissioner Clayton. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, motion is postponed.
Thank you all. And Mr. Young, Mr. Newberry, and I, along with Ms. Ripito, will keep you informed as that legislative session comes to a close and keep you updated on what's going on there.
All
Thank
right,
you.
so I guess we should probably make it clear. We're just postponing until the end of the legislative session.
We actually had talked last week, and we think we'll have a good idea what's going to happen sometime in early May. And so
Mhm.
we'll have something back hopefully before summer begins. If not, then at the start of summer.
Okay. All right. PZ. All right, so PZ 2-23 is the one that you want to move later. So PZ 20-22, Mr. Newberry.
Thank you. PZ 20-22 Greenberg Development Company LLC, PO Box 486 Wildwood, Missouri 63038. A request for the modification of the town center regulating plan for a 4.6 acre tract of land that is currently designated by it as a workplace district to the neighborhood general district to accommodate its use for a maximum of 11 single family detached dwellings on individual lots and associated parking areas. Street address 16795 Manchester Road, St. Louis County, locator numbers 24V630312. Northwest corner of the Manchester Road and Taylor Road intersections, Ward 8. And I'll read the next one in tandem with, thank you. PZ 21-22 Greenberg Development Company LLC, PO Box 486 Wildwood, Missouri 63038. A request for a change in zoning for a total of 5 properties that are currently designated either amended C8 Planned Commercial District, street addresses 16720 and 16780 Main Street, St. Louis County, locator numbers 23V310581 and 23V310561. C8 Planned Commercial District, street address 16700 Main Street, St. Louis County, locator number 23V310570, and in U Non-Urban Residence District, street addresses 16795 and 16727 Manchester Road, St. Louis County, locator numbers 24V630303 and 24V630312 to the second amended C8 Planned Commercial District, street addresses 16720 and 16780 Main Street, St. Louis County, locator numbers 23V310581 and 23V310561, amended C8 Planned Commercial District and C8 Planned Commercial District, including a conditional use permit, street addresses 16700 Main Street and 16795 and 16727 Manchester Road, St. Louis County, locator numbers 23V310570, 24V630312, and 24V630303, all in association with an overall tract of land that is 11.8 acres, which would thereby authorize a mixed-use development in the city's town center area, such to be located on the west side of Taylor Road between Main Street and Manchester Road. Proposed uses, all C2 shopping districts permitted and conditional uses, a maximum of 189 multiple family units and a maximum of 11 single-family detached dwellings on individual lots, along with public space, pickleball courts and others, stormwater management facilities, and parking areas. Ward 8.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, before beginning the department's brief presentation on this particular matter, given that a conditional use permit is associated with this set of rezoning requests, the department would like to enter into the record the city's charter, the city's master plan, the city's zoning ordinance, chapter 415 of the municipal code, the file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning regarding this particular set of requests. And then finally, any testimony that has been provided as part of the public hearing and subsequent meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vinich.
Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight an information report with recommendation relative to the request that Mr. Newberry so eloquently just read into tonight's record. The request, from many perspectives, is probably one of the most ambitious that's been attempted, so to speak, in town center area. Obviously, since the inception of the city, there have been major developments that have occurred in town center, specifically Deerberg's Town Center and Wildwood Town Center, both accomplished by developers with a great deal of experience, same as Greenberg Development Company, the applicant in this case. The request requires a change to the regulating plan and then a multitude of rezonings to accommodate the design that was presented at public hearing. In the report, the department does support the change in the regulating plan to accommodate the single-family detached dwellings on individual lots at the southernmost end of the project, or that portion of the site that occupies the Taylor Road roundabout at its intersection with Manchester Road. Additionally, the department's report with recommendation does endorse all of the rezonings and the granting of the conditional use permit. Principal among the reasons for that support is the fact that this particular area, with the regulating plan change on the southern end, is designated downtown district. That particular district in town center is intended to accommodate the greatest intensity and density of uses. Several years ago, as part of the update of the town center plan, multiple family units were added as a conditional use in the downtown district to accommodate projects like this particular one that is being proposed tonight. I think the intent of the update was to ensure that in areas like Taylor Road and Main Street, high traffic areas where commercial units exist, that we could accommodate a different type of residential use. In this case, multiple family units and a 4-story building with retail on the first floor and residential on the remaining 3 floors. If this type of development is going to be successful anywhere in town center, the department believes that it is this location, given the characteristics associated with it. I think it's important to note that there has been extensive research of the stormwater management plan, traffic patterns, and signalization by a traffic impact study and other activities of the Department of Public Works and the Department of Planning to ensure that the conditions that are being presented to you tonight will ensure a quality development that exhibits excellent architecture, quality materials, appropriate colors, and engaging designs. Occupying what would be the southwest corner of the major intersection in the downtown district of Town Center, Taylor Road and Main Street, begets that this particular project meet all of those high standards. Hopefully through your review of the conditions, you'll note that we've used a lot of those requirements for architecture and design that have been successful elsewhere, both in our residential communities in Town Center and here in Town Center itself in the downtown and workplace districts. The department believes the recommendation is appropriate based upon the adherence to the conditions by the developer during construction and thereafter, and believes it will be an asset to Town Center. One component that isn't normally discussed at these meetings is the impact of additional rooftops on the business community in the immediate vicinity. As we've heard from many businesses over the course of years, that the lack of rooftops, particularly a daytime population, leads to issues regarding stability and longevity of our business community. The department believes this is a step in that right direction to guarantee our business community that there are more people within walking distance that can benefit from their services. So tonight, as mentioned, the department is recommending the Planning and Zoning Commission grant the regulating plan change, grant the conditional use permit in the C8 Plan Commercial District to accommodate the multiple family units, and grant the remainder zonings to allow the remainder of the development to proceed forward as presented on the preliminary development plan. Thank you. After a motion and second, Mr. Newberry, Ms. Ripito, and I will be available to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mayor Boland.
I would move that the commission move forward with the recommendation of the department in granting the various items as noted in that report so that this development can come about.
All right, thank you. Seconded by Councilman Brost. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Abstain.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
yes,
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
and Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right. Let's see here. You're welcome. PZ 16-22, Mr. Newberry.
PZ 16-22, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request to review amendments to regulations and requirements contained in Chapter 415 of the zoning ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri pertaining to roof-mounted solar panels or other roof-mounted solar energy systems within the residential districts, R districts, and the NU non-urban residence district, including but not limited to their installation in a manner where they are visible from an adjoining or adjacent roadway, and the procedures for their approval, all wards.
All right, thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, before the department begins its brief presentation on this particular matter, we would like to identify a couple of items. First, much of the regulations that are before you tonight have been prepared by our city attorney along with other attorneys in his office. And that is the first item of information that I believe is important to tonight's discussion. As the Planning and Zoning Commission may recall, that was a request as part of the motion to proceed forward with further research that the city attorney investigate other locations and determine how they address particularly front-facing solar panels in their installations on residential home sites. Secondly, the department would like to thank Mr. Young and the other attorneys that worked on this particular set of regulations and the information in support of it. Obviously, when we received the information late last week, we were very impressed with the thoroughness, the detail, and the logic behind what was being proposed. So thank you. Tonight, I'm going to kind of set the table and let Mr. Young add anything he would like or carry the water on this one particularly, but I would note that the city attorney has provided a very logical approach to understanding the changes. The first is what the department describes as a discussion aid. It, for the most part, summarizes the changes in a very succinct manner and allows the commission to understand the main proposed changes or alterations that are being offered relative to solar energy systems. Amongst those, I think that I would just like to highlight and then ask Mr. Young to conclude is that for any solar energy system, the Planning and Zoning Commission would no longer be involved in the determinations relating to them. There would no longer be any conditional use permit process for ground mounted systems or those roof mounted systems where the panels are front facing. Don't look worried. There are provisions in the regulations to allow the department to gain expertise from the Architectural Review Board if there are questions about visibility, aesthetics, and impact, as well as other protections to ensure that a single standard with limited interpretation is applied when determining if a front-facing system of solar panels is visible or not. The second item is that the city attorney has created what I believe is two solid definitions for systems, those that are mounted on the roofs and those that are integrated. The regulations favor integrated systems, and through the photographs that were provided as part of the discussion aid, I think it gives a great example of what those can be and what the future holds for solar generation by systems mounted on the roof. Finally, there are what I believe provisions that do not preclude combination systems, meaning there may be some mounted systems on the side or rear and integrated on the front. So I think it gives a great deal of flexibility and offsets some of the potential charges or costs associated with just integrated systems alone. So with that, the department has prepared its information report. Obviously, with the information that now is being provided by the city attorney, we think we've given you a very good grounding, so to speak, to start the discussion and lead to a recommendation that would be favorable to the approach that's being presented tonight. With that, Mr. Young, would you like to take it from there? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, again, what we were tasked by this Planning and Zoning Commission to review was how to address concerns about front-facing while still allowing them, which we continue to do under a discrete set of circumstances that is easily determinable and expressly stated in the code, but also broaden the regulations to allow for different types of solar electric generating systems to be integrated into buildings that are less intrusive, less glare, and are intended to continue to preserve property values. So it's actually broader in its application than it currently exists today. The other thing is there were concerns that were raised about environmental impacts of disposal of components. We've added a new permitting process for the disposal of the components of solar systems so that they can be confirmed to be compliant with federal regulations about the disposal of any toxic materials that may be contained therein. And finally, I would note that compared to some of the neighboring communities, and we've provided examples of neighboring communities, what is being proposed today is actually less restrictive than other cities in the community, in the St. Louis and St. Charles areas have. And we've provided those examples in the memorandum in the staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Commissioner Helfrey.
Hi, Mr. Young. So my question is, can you please talk to me a little bit more about the disposal? You said that you've addressed it and that it's a permitting process, and you said it's at the federal level of standard. So can you please give me a little bit more explanation on that?
Yes, in the code, we have a permitting requirements that requires the submission of a disposal plan. So it is unlawful for them to dispose of any components of a system without getting a permit first, and they have to describe the plan of what they're disposing and how they're going to dispose of it. Now, obviously, some portions of the system are going to be normal landfill related materials. Other materials may be subject to hazardous waste disposal requirements under federal law, which is identified in the code. And they have to show how they're properly disposing of it consistent with that federal law.
Okay, so I guess my question is, how do we know that federal law is just going to be the best one? I mean, why would we not have a local law regarding the disposal of these hazardous wastes? Or solar systems that aren't, even the parts that aren't hazardous, why would we not have a local? Does that make sense? I just feel like federal's so broad. I feel like we should address it at a local level and make sure that it's handled at a local level.
Mhm. So, and it's certainly something the city can consider. That's what the Planning and Zoning Commission's direction is. We can certainly go down that route. Now, the idea here, from my perspective, is one, I'm not an environmental lawyer, and I would have to consult with someone to provide if we're creating new law and new regulations. Otherwise, the idea was to maintain uniformity and conformity with the applicable regulations for the disposal of hazardous materials.
Okay, and then my next question would be, how does this affect the people that already have solar panels? Because they won't have applied for the permit. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, in terms of those who already have them constructed, so a roof mounted solar system, which is the typical system that you all deal with on a case by case basis, is they're going to be continued to allow to have them if they've been approved and they've been installed. If they have not yet been or have not been installed yet, then they'll be subject to these regulations.
That's my question, is that the ones that have the solar panels on the roofs now, at such time when they need to, I'm assuming that eventually they'll have a life, right? At such time that they have to dispose of them, will they be subject to these rules? Because
Yes.
they will, okay,
Yes.
because they did not apply for a permit, correct? Anybody that has them currently?
Correct. So if they have them currently before they dispose of them, or even remove them from the top, I want to be clear that it says no removal or disposal. So if you remove it, you have to get a permit first. And that includes anyone who currently has a system.
Okay, and did you say that that's specifically only for roof mounted? It's not for ground mounted also? or
No, it's
all?
it's for all.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mayor Boland.
So I want to thank you, John, as city attorney for and our Department of Planning for coming up with this revision. In studying it and in listening to your explanation of it, I think it's very cutting edge actually for the city, in the sense that we are following what many other cities do, although not quite as strictly. Many of them prohibit front-facing solar panels with no exceptions, no ability whatsoever. This does not do that. And secondly, and perhaps more importantly, the item you mentioned about allowing more solar panels that, as technology develops, are integrated and do not pose visual risk, so to speak. So with that in mind, I would move that the commission move forward with the department's recommendation relative to modifying the solar panel regulations as you have presented so well. That's my motion.
Right. Commissioner Helfrey, second.
I would second that motion.
Any further questions or discussion? Councilman Brost.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they're front facing, will there still be a CUP?
No, sir. At this stage, with that more defined or specific standard, all of the decisions relative to front facing would be made by the department, and if needed, assistance from the Architectural Review Board.
Okay, but they would still be approved by the department.
Yes, sir. There still would be an approval process, and now we have more tools to make sure we do, let's say, a less interpretive job and a more succinct job.
And then I guess, what about complying with HOAs? Is that outside of the city's approval?
Yes.
And just to be clear, the answer legally is yes. However, we do maintain the requirement that as part of any application, they are required to notify their HOA of their intent.
Notify, not, we don't require approval.
And legally, we can't.
Okay.
Commissioner Jackson, I think, did you have a question or a comment?
I do. I'm in Nashville. I can't really read everything. But is there on the aesthetics of it? Now they're more dark, they're sleeker, they look better. Just want to make sure that there's some guidelines in there for that. Just
Mr. Jackson, not speaking for Mr. Young, but I believe he's been very thorough. And the review of the department indicated that we're looking not only at aesthetics, but certainly maintaining property values and ensuring that individuals that seek solar energy systems have a range of options.
okay. So my only parting comment is really just the hope that the city council will continue down the road to develop a city inspection for homes, and that solar would be part of this on sale homes for these systems, which is related but not part of what we're approving today. So I just encourage city council to keep moving forward on home and business inspections upon sale.
Mr. Jackson, with the permission of the chair, the Planning and Zoning Commission will have an item on its agenda this coming April relating to a reoccupancy permit program. So we're moving forward.
Thank you, sir. And nice job on this. I know it took a lot of work.
I'll deflect that over to the city attorney.
Commissioner Broyles? Did you have something?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Helfrey?
Okay, I have a couple questions that I bring up every time, and I'm just going to get it clear, and I want it on the record so that anybody that's watching this has the correct information. Oh, shoot. We were talking about, what about the trees, being able to cut down trees? That's my first one. Go ahead.
Well, so there's two parts to that. One is you are prohibited from cutting down trees just for installation purposes. That's consistent with the code as it existed previously. Number two is for any front facing that may be permitted, depending upon, they have to identify a tree plan. So or a site plan that identifies where each tree that is supposed to be a screening tree that prohibits view from a public right of way or a private right of way. They have to identify it and they cannot take it down. Okay. And then several times when people come in front of us for these solar panels, they say, an example was one of the people that were selling to the homeowners said, if you don't allow this, we're going to lose 40% of the electricity provided. So when they say those things, is it 40% of the electricity provided to run the home or 40% of the electricity provided to run a city block? So when they talk about those things and they come and they say, if you don't let us do this, we're not going to have, is there anywhere that says you have to explain what that is? And well, number one, it's no longer a factor
because
in the analysis. So number one, the code expressly states that maximizing the location of solar panels on a house are intended to provide the best possible, but not necessarily the maximum energy return. The second part of it is, again, it's not a basis for any front facing. That is not part of the analysis for front facing. And the way we address that is that if they can't have roof mounted, the typical one we see on the front because they don't qualify under our code, they can still do the building integrated. And they can do a blended system that allows the building integrated to supplement to get to their maximum amount. But again, it's not our concern necessarily in reviewing front facing or whether or not they're getting the maximum return.
okay, thank you so much.
And Ms. Helfrey.
Yes, sir.
Again, if you'll review the reports that have been prepared by the department and
I have been
ultimately,
reading them all day.
and ultimately acted on by the Planning and Zoning Commission, we've never used that as part of a rationale to support or not support a front-facing system.
And I do recognize that, but because this is all being, it's out for the public to see, I would like for everybody that's out there and that's watching this to
Yes, ma'am.
understand that, because I think sometimes there's a little bit lost. We see it, we get all this stuff, and sometimes people that are listening don't get that. So thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
All right, so I've got a question here under 3A, the exception. When it says has to be shielded at all times throughout the year as determined by the view present when standing in the closest publicly traversable right of way. So I'm thinking specifically of is it Stonecrest off of Center Street, where they've got the homes that facing the street and then backing to the trail? Does that mean solar panels would not be allowed on either front or back of that home?
Well, I can't certainly speak to a specific application, but in that particular instance where those lots, particularly on the south side, on the north
North
side of the
side, yeah.
development, are so visible in both directions from the street and from West and Center Avenues, I would say an integrated system would probably be the only option available.
Thank you. That's what I was afraid of.
Just as a point of clarification, if I understand it, so first of all, the regulation about it not being visible only applies to front facing. Now, front facing applies to whichever side is on a public street or a street. So if you've got a rear facing a trail, you can still do the rear mounted. You just
Okay.
can't do front.
Well, we've got including but not limited to public or private streets, sidewalks and trails.
Right, but that is
So that's
only,
why I
that's
asked.
only applicable to the general prohibition on front facing. So that's an exception to the front facing.
Okay.
It is not for rear facing.
All right, and then I guess it was about a year ago, we had the house that back to North Etherton, I believe, where we said they had 2 front yards. Does that qualify as well?
Yes, we addressed what the front yard is by abutment or abutting to a public or private right of way. So it had 2 front yards.
So they would still have to have the full screening, but even though their backyard was,
In that particular instance, not again going from memory, as you recall, the Etherton Road sat elevation wise high versus the home low. There was an existing mature line of trees that was supplemented by the requirements of the commission. So in some regards, that might be an opportunity based upon the new regulations to accommodate it. I can't say.
but
for sure.
if those trees had not been there, it would be disallowed under this rule, though.
Certainly, it would be visible from Etherton Road, which is a public street with a front yard.
All right, I'm not a fan. Thank you.
Question.
All right,
Ready? Excuse me, Commissioner Cohn. Commissioner Broyles,
I'm sorry, are we voting?
yes.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, I didn't hear the gentleman before me respond.
Oh, Mr. Cohn said
Yes.
yes.
Okay. And my answer is yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton votes yes. Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson votes yes. Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward votes yes. Chair Beatty,
No.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes,
and Mayor Boland.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Helfrey?
I-
I'll come to you next.
I don't know if this would be an appropriate time, but I would request that the city attorney would help with this. I would like to request it in the solar panel things that we have require an escrow. So that when they purchase them, that they dispose of them properly, or is that no longer necessary because of the permit?
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So the idea is that we would escrow funds to ensure that it's properly disposed sometime in the future.
Correct.
I would have to give more thought to that. A, I want to make sure that it's legally authorized. B, I want to make sure what those funds are going to go towards from the city's perspective, but I'd want to look at that. I'm not
Okay.
saying yes or no. I just
So
did
could
look
you,
at that.
could you look at that and bring that back at our next meeting? And what I'd like, well, my goal is to make sure that we are requiring and following through with the making sure that it's disposed of properly.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
May I comment on that, please?
Hold on. Oh, okay, go ahead.
So it's my hope that when in April, when Mr. Vinich and the Wildwood City team presents on home inspections upon sale, that a lot of this would be captured in that, right? Because it would be inspected. And, you know, we may need to do an addendum though for like the batteries maybe there's a permitting policy for batteries when you change them out that the city's notified. I don't know. I think in the home inspections, occupancy inspections, I'm hoping that covers a lot of that, Ms. Commissioner Helfrey. That's my 2 cents on it. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Mr. Jackson. My concern is the toxic waste and the hazardous parts of the solar panels. In Wildwood, we have the Bliss property, we have the Callahan property. We don't live far from Weldon Springs. We don't live far from Westlake. So we've got a history in the St. Louis area of maybe not disposing of things properly. And I think we have a duty to the citizens of the city of Wildwood to make sure that these things are disposed of properly in the future. And since we're dealing with it now, we should deal with it from beginning to end, in my opinion. So that's why I requested that. Thank you.
Councilman Brost.
Yeah, I was, one, my question was, why were you voting against it? Was the first question. And the second one is that we still, if there's an exception to the policy, we still have the CUP process. Is that correct, Joe?
Mr. Brost, I believe now the conditional use permit process is no longer applicable. And again, the oversight would be ultimately the Architectural Review Board. And I assume there may be an odd case where the Board of Adjustment might have to get involved, but certainly not the Planning and Zoning Commission as proposed.
Okay, so if it doesn't meet this, that's it.
And again, really, the Architectural Review Board is to assist the department more so than the applicant in many regards. And then obviously there's the Board of Adjustment if interpretation is made and there's a challenge to that interpretation.
Thank you.
As far as why I voted against it, I still believe that it's a minority of the citizens of Wildwood that are really in opposition to the front facing solar. And I'm just wanting to give the homeowners who have the unfortunate position of a south facing front roof the option of having solar.
Mr. Chairman, just anecdotally, we had, as we do every month, coffee with the mayor first Thursday, 7:30 in the community room. And in February, this topic was discussed. We had, I don't know, probably 50, maybe in slightly less in attendance. And one of the attendees during the discussion or after it was nearly done, he said, I'm just curious what can we poll the room to see what people in the room think? And sure. So we did. And I asked the question, and I didn't get into allow them with exceptions. I just asked, how many in the room are in favor of front mounted solar panels on residences in Wildwood? How many are against? It was 2/3 against, 1/3 in favor, roughly. Just FYI. Now that's just a sampling of people, so it's not scientific, but that was the result.
And so I still go back to the one we had on West Glen Farms where the HOA pulled the residents and it was 70% in favor.
Of course, it's a citywide issue.
And the one in your neighborhood, I believe you had one against. And how many? So that's my thought. We'll continue. So I guess now let's go back to PZ 2-23. Mr. Vunich.
Oh, sorry. The next item is PZ 02-23 Alabar and Caitlin Abdul Husani, 17575 Thunder Mountain Road, Wildwood, Missouri, 63025, care of ADT Solar and Jessica Pettit, 128 North Park Boulevard, Covington, Louisiana, 70433. A request for a conditional use permit, CUP, in the NU non-urban resident district for the installation of roof-mounted solar panels, which are to be so situated on the dwelling as to be visible from the adjoining private roadway, with such being located at 17575 Thunder Mountain Road, St. Louis County, locator number 27W310078, street address 17575 Thunder Mountain Road. This request is to be reviewed in accordance with Chapter 415.090 NU non-urban district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance, which establish standards and requirements for the installation of solar panels. This requested permit is required due to the panel's placement on the front-facing area of the roof of the dwelling, thereby causing them to be visible from the adjoining roadway. 25 panels of the system. This particular property is located in Ward 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry?
Nope.
Oh,
Motion.
okay. Mayor Boland.
So in light of the commission's action moments ago, I would move that PZ 2-23 be postponed until such time as it is determined conclusively whether the proposed ordinance changes are in fact adopted. And my reasoning for that is to be consistent with what we're doing and not produce disparate results. So my motion would be to postpone until that time. Thank you.
Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Cohn. All those in favor say, or yeah, no discussion on postponements, right? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Opposed?
All right, please, Commissioner or Chair Beatty, please, for the record, it's my neighbors. So one way or the other, even though it's a postponement, I'm recusing myself from this one for sure.
Okay, appreciate it. So motion carries with Commissioner.
Yeah, so Commissioner Jackson will need to be
abstain.
abstain. Yeah.
Noted. Thank you.
All right, and then let's see. PZ 5-21 now, Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PZ 5-21, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request for the Planning and Zoning Commission to conduct a comprehensive review of, then consider potential changes to City of Wildwood's Municipal Code, Chapter 410, Tree Preservation and Restoration Code, and its associated landscape manual and sustainable plantings guide for the purposes of ensuring such are consistent with current techniques reflective of best practices and accomplish the goals and objectives of the master plan of the City of Wildwood, all wards.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration, again with assistance from the city attorney, its information report with recommendation relating to the city's tree preservation and restoration code. As the commission may recall, at the February meeting, the department had prepared changes to the tree preservation and restoration code that were extensive and included, coupled with it, alterations or potentially the combination of our landscape manual and sustainable plannings guide to recreate a more user-friendly document. As the discussion proceeded forward, there were questions from the commission relating to the review of the proposed changes by the city attorney. At the conclusion of the discussion, a motion was made by the Planning and Zoning Commission to postpone any action, none was requested, and allow the city attorney to review the proposed modifications to the particular code. Tonight, those modifications that have been provided by the city attorney are identified in what is described as bolded, italicized, dark red font. And as you can see, there are some changes that have been introduced into the definitions section and clarifications on several points of the other regulations. Collectively, though, the additions were welcome and I think improve the content of the proposed code. And tonight, the department is recommending that the Planning and Zoning Commission give favorable action toward it. I would note that as part of that favorable action, the report recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission's next step would proceed with revising the landscape manual and the sustainable planning's guide within a very short period of time of any adoption of the code itself. With that, after a motion and second, again, Mr. Young, Ms. Ripito, Mr. Newberry, and I will be available for any questions you may have in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Commissioner Helfrey.
I just have a question. I noticed when I was reading this, it says with the list of trees, specific list of trees, did I miss the list of trees in here? Is it in here, the list of trees that are approved?
That is part of our landscape manual. And so the intent would be to begin this particular process very quickly. We have a lot of information in our existing landscape manual. We have a great deal more information in our sustainable planning's guide. But we think, that being the department, that we can provide a single document that's easier to use, less pages, voluminous, and certainly one that reflects more of current trends in terms of native versus non-native plantings.
Okay, so when all of that is said and done, can we put as an appendix the list of trees to this?
Certainly.
That's,
We've
you know,
updated our suggested tree plantings, particularly for individual lots, private lots. And we've always kept up to date on our street tree plantings because each project that involves a street tree, particularly on public right of way or in private subdivisions as part of the review, we basically have tried to keep pace. I know you're showing some skepticism, but I can assure you that our landscape manual was done by the premier authority in the St. Louis region at the time, Skip Kincaid. He's worked at many different arborists and nursery companies, as well as was the tree czar, so to speak, with the city of St. Louis. We've engaged Davy Resource Group to help us in this particular instance. And again, we feel comfortable that through our planning processes, whether it be a site plan for a park or a trail or our streetscapes, that we're doing the best we can with what's available.
Well, I think we do great. I think that there's some places where when we have trees that have gone missing, that probably we need to kind of, that's where my skepticism is. But other than that, I think that the planning department's doing a great job. And I will make a motion to approve this.
Mayor Boland.
You want,
I did not make a motion.
well, I just, I'm sorry, I just had one observation. And let me say before I make this observation that I'm very much a proponent of trees. In fact, I'm the guy who got the Grand Tree project. I started that with the help of the council. And so my question, and I only have one, and it has to do with the Grand Tree stand definition. And it says a grouping of trees no less than 6 in total, each having a size of 12 inches, so on and so forth. But there's no definition given to the size of the group. In other words, where these trees could be located. So as I see this, the way it's written, if I go on a piece of property and I see 6 trees, 1 there and 1 way over there and 4 here and so forth, I can draw a boundary around that, and all of a sudden it becomes a grand tree stand. And I think the intent of this is by the term stand, that it is a group of trees that meet this qualification, 6 in total of a certain size, that are in immediate vicinity of each other. And I think that there would need to be some definition to that. Perhaps, city attorney?
Well, from my perspective, I think it's drafted to give specificity without being overly specific to be under inclusive. And the language I would point to that says that forms an area of ecological or biological significance for purposes of stormwater management, soil stabilization, wildlife habitat, and aesthetic appeal. So that does allow for an analysis by the arborist of whether that group, whether it be a small group or a large group, is sufficient under that definition.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying to give it a very clear cut definition, but I think this is broad without being under inclusive.
And that, in my respectfully, if I may, Mr. Chair, I hear what you're saying, John. I think that makes it determinable by one person potentially and possibly subjective. I guess my question is, and I might direct it more to Joe than you. What are we concerned about here? 6 trees within a circumference of 20 feet of each other, 50 feet of each other? What generally are we looking at here?
Well, I'll answer your question, then I'll offer a suggestion.
Okay.
To answer your question, the department, when reviewing creating the grand tree stand definition, looked at the reserve at Wildwood. As you know, there was a lot of conversation about the area in the northwest corner of that particular project site. And that although there were trees there that didn't meet the grand trees definition, there were enough of them in proximity to each other that they created a stand. So that's the example that was used. And in that case, there were many, many trees within basically what I would consider probably 100-yard radius of each other. So there are different, each stand would have a different set of characteristics in some regard. What I would suggest is if the motion is to proceed forward, by the time the letter of recommendation would be presented to the commission for final action in April, the department will work with the city attorney and our arborist from Davie Resource Group to see if we can maybe do a little better job defining that location and that let's say that universality between the trees themselves.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I mean, again, I'm a proponent of this and it's just that we have such specificity with, inches in diameter and species of trees. And then all of a sudden we're going to that forms an area of ecological, biological significance. I mean, you may think it's significant. She doesn't, he does, and I don't. I mean, so I'd just like to see a little more meat on the bones with that. I think that's a slippery slope potentially. So.
And again, if there is a desire to proceed forward tonight with the general recommendation, we'll certainly have something back to you in April.
Okay.
All right. So
I make a motion to approve with all of that stuff requested.
all right, seconded by Commissioner Clayton. Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles votes yes. Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson votes yes. Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward votes yes. Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see here. So next on the agenda, site development plan for St. Louis Community College at Wildwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department is requesting no action on this particular item because under our zoning ordinance, specifically the NU non-urban resident district, college campuses are permitted by right, and there is a process for the review of site development plans that does not include the Planning and Zoning Commission. However, the addition of a 140,000 square foot building onto the campus is a major development and certainly one the department felt is appropriate for the Planning and Zoning Commission to have information and background upon. In the letter that was prepared, the department does identify one issue that remains that is critical to the success of the project, and that particular issue is secondary access. If you're familiar with the campus, The primary access, and for all intents and purposes, the sole access is via Generations Drive, New College Avenue to Route 109, which is signalized. There is a second access point, Turkey Track Road, but that is limited only to right outs. And even in that instance, with sight distance, the hill, and the speeds of traffic on that particular roadway, it is very dangerous at times. The departments, Public Works and Planning, had initiated at the start of its review in November 2022 a request to provide access from the project to Manchester Road. Ultimately, the Community College District sought not to provide that access, and ultimately a decision was made to wait until the traffic impact study performed by Lockmuller Associates was completed. That traffic impact study indicated that the secondary access to Manchester Road would not be needed until phase 3. So tonight, the department is advising you of the circumstances. We are still in discussions with the community college regarding that access point. We hope to convince them that not only is it a matter of function, but more importantly, safety. Safety from the standpoint that if there is an accident or that particular intersection at Route 109 and New College Avenue were to become blocked, for all intents and purposes, there's no other way out of that area for people to leave or emergency vehicles to arrive. And so we'll let you know how it goes from this point. But again, this is just an information point tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Helfrey.
So Mr. Bunich, I'm kind of confused because when we did the town center update, the many months that we spent on that, this was one of the things that we talked about, the access because of the neighborhood there and this secondary road. So I don't understand, is there nothing we can do for those homeowners? Because if they expand this and it's going to be a nursing school, is that right? So there's going to be a lot more cars out of one little bitty road. Is there nothing we can do?
Well, we're certainly in negotiations and discussions, but I would note that in the traffic study, it was identified that the original traffic assessment done for phase 1 indicated that there would be 10,000 students at the campus. They have not reached that level at any time. In fact, their enrollment under phase 2 would be half of that. And so from that perspective, all of the assumptions on road systems were based upon a campus population that has never been reached, and even under phase 2 will not be reached. And so the point being is the existing system would work, and the traffic impact study indicates such, but it's dependent on a system of signals at Route 109 and New College Avenue that have to work perfectly all the time.
Thank you so much.
Oh, Commissioner Broyles.
Thank you. I have a sincere interest in this, and I believe Mr. Vunich knows the reason. There was, I can't even remember the date now, but there was a builder from Arkansas that wanted to build some apartment buildings behind the YMCA. And there was a study done then at that time, how that would impact. And we also have lots of cars coming in and out of the YMCA and the businesses across from the YMCA. There's also been people who work in the business buildings across the highway of 109. And all of those people came together during that period of time, and the traffic was one of the top issues. So I want everyone to be cognizant of this as it moves forward. And the best thing I can see is that road being built and access in and out of Manchester Road. Thank you.
Commissioner Broyles, I don't see the traffic like you do, but I completely agree.
I think
Well, the
Mr.
lights,
Brown
I can
and
tell you, if I can add one more thing, if you travel out of that area onto 109, or even if you go straight across, you're lucky if you can get 5 cars out of there before the light changes.
Oh, for sure. Manchester Road's the same way. It's horrible during school hours, but the rest of the day, it's not as bad. What were you going to say, Mr. Vunich?
I was just going to concur with our chair and Commissioner Broyles. I think Mr. Brown and I are doing the best we can to convince the community college that that second access point to Manchester Road would be in everyone's benefit. Thank you.
And so that second access point, that's planned to be at Pond School, correct?
Yes, the community college owns a strip that extends all the way out to Manchester Road. And it would be basically just to the east of the existing access into Pond School.
Is it the road to the bus barn or would a new one be?
It would be east of the road to the bus barn.
Oh, just east of there?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
All
Sorry.
right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I believe that's all we have for tonight. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Second motion by the mayor, second by Commissioner Clayton. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any
I
opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.